Hi, let's talk about politeness in France. What are the codes of politeness in France and how are they different from the UK or the US? My name's Chris, I'm a French coach for adults at OuiCommunicate. Let's jump into it. If you're visiting France or moving to France, especially from the US, you might worry about being seen as rude. It's a thing that people talk about. And Americans often imagine French people as being overly formal or obsessed with etiquette and even cold. And in this video I propose to talk about what's really going on and what the differences are. When we talk about politeness, the very word politeness means different things across different cultures, and this is where it gets complicated. Because the way people define politeness changes from country to country. And it's not about being nice or about smiling. It's rather about showing respect according to the codes of that country. So it's how you ask for things, how you speak, and even how you make noise. Now let's talk about the US first. In the US, in my experience, people don't usually expect formal politeness in daily situations. So the country is huge, so many people don't have time. That's my theory. The country's massive, there are too many people, it moves too fast, and you don't have time or even an interest in subtle social codes. And really, I think, I don't want to be insulting, but as long as you pay for something, you're good. And I always say that's the barrier to entry. If you want to be a member of the USA club, the American club, if you can buy a service, you're good. That's the barrier to entry. You are part of the club. You could come from Norway, Kazakhstan, or whatever country. If you have a dollar bill in your hand and you can buy a service, you're good. Welcome to America. I'm not saying this to make Americans look shallow. It's not what I mean. But in terms of fitting in, that's really all you need to do. Can you buy a service? I love America, I really do. But if me and my wife were living in Germany, we'd still be talking 4 or 5 years later about how Germans do things. It would be a lot harder to fit in. If this was Italy, Germany, or even France, it would be harder to fit in. Yeah, the codes would be, or Japan even, especially Japan, the codes would be a lot harder to understand. And I have an example that comes to me. The other day I was at Taco Bell. You might think, yeah, well, Taco Bell, of course. But still, I think it's relevant because I was at Taco Bell and the clerk called out something like order 16 or number 16 or whatever the number was. And the customer, the guy, just shuffled to the counter in his slippers. And I remember his jogging bottoms falling off him. You know, he was looking at his phone. You know, shuffled towards the counter, barely mumbled, yeah. He just didn't even look the guy in the eyes. Took his bag, shuffled out. The clerk was gone already. You know, both parties were happy, and that was it. You don't even acknowledge the guy handing you over your food. It's just, yeah, walk out and that was it. It's completely normal. And I think the codes on the phone are different also in the US. When you phone up a business, I mean, the other day I phoned up Midas. They don't have a way to answer the phone. It's just, hello? And I have to say, hello, is this Midas? Yeah. If they don't understand you, they'll say, what? You'll never hear this in England. Sometimes I'll say something, oh, by any chance, do you have this or that? There'll be a brief silence. What? What? What do you mean, what? Are you telling me what? I'm a potential customer over here. So they don't say things like, sorry, could you repeat that? Or just, I find it funny. So these are just different codes of politeness. And I love America, but even when Americans aren't trying to be rude, I think there's a very clear me first vibe in America, and you'll see it, for example, in noise levels. For example, loud gardening crews with 3 gas-powered blowers at the same time. You imagine the cacophony it is. 3 leaf blowers. Europeans have no clue what a leaf blower is. But they're like, imagine 3 motorbikes with a slightly different tone to them, a slightly different note. So one's doing meh, the other one's doing muh, and the other one's doing ba, all at the same time. Brilliant cacophony. 3 motorbikes at the same time in the neighbour's garden. Imagine the noise levels. Well, that's what people expect to hear over here. And it's completely normal. And when you hire these gardening services, you don't even think about your neighbours. What you see as a property owner in America is that your lawn's going to grow tall, you don't want to cut it, you're going to hire a gardening service, and how it's done is not your problem. Whatever noise, it's just not your problem. And no one can complain because it's, in a sense, it's not your fault. It's the gardening company's fault, and tough luck if you find it noisy. I think that the idea that your neighbour might be inconvenienced doesn't even register, it's not even part of the conversation. It's, what do you mean you're inconvenienced? It's my land, my property, my noise. So I don't think that people think in terms of shared space. It's, in a sense, it's every household for itself. And I'll go off script here for a second. So there's a boy opposite, he must be about 16 or 17, and his hobby is to grind metal. I also think it's his profession. So he has one of these saws, like a circular saw, whatever they're called, you know, and they grind metal and sparks flying and it makes a dreadful noise. So about 2 months ago I crossed the road because it was between 8 and 9 p.m, 8 or 9 p.m, and he had the garage door open and it acts as a sort of an echo chamber. What he hears, I think, is less loud than what we hear because it echoes all through the houses, and it was 8 p.m and it was dark, so I had to catch his attention first, so, you know, waving, because I didn't want to walk onto his property. Hi, hi. And the funny thing is, he had his ear cancelling things on, you know, his ear muffs, his ear cancelling. I'm looking for mine just to show you. So he had these things on, right? And he was also listening to very loud music. And what was funny is, because there was also hip hop music going. So the funny thing is that, so he was cancelling his own sounds because of the noise. But then he had to put the music up because otherwise he couldn't hear the music through the noise, so it was like double the noise. So eventually I caught his attention, and I remember him, you know, oh, what? He took his, because he was taking a break, so he took a quick break and took his earphones, and I said, hi, I don't mean to be an annoying neighbour, but it's sort of 8 p.m. and we have, you know, old people living here and they're very sick. And I explained the case, you know, my in-laws are very old and, you know, it is making quite a lot of noise. And I explained it very nicely to the boy. He thought about it for 3 days, and what I think happened, he told his father. His father said, what? How dare he? It's my land, it's my house. Next thing you know, he was making even more noise on purpose on a Sunday until 9 p.m. And what he did was he had all the floodlights on, and I have a video I'm going to show you in a second, all the floodlights on, an engine going, a petrol electricity generator, a loud engine that I think serves for his pressure cleaner, water pressure cleaner thing. And he was doing it on a Sunday, he was operating it on a Sunday until 9 p.m. We looked at him through the window because I was telling my wife, I can't believe this kid, what is he bloody doing? And he was hosing down the drive, the same spot on the drive for an hour, 1 hour straight, just all the lights on, just to annoy us. And that's, I think, a typical reaction, is that how dare you impede on my land, on my right to make noise, I'm going to make even more noise next time. And that's what he did. He made even more noise. And this is the sad result, because I made a video of it, so watch this. This is 9 p.m. on a Sunday. As you can see, it's a very sad thing to witness, and I showed this video to Americans who just, their jaws dropped. And they said, what? How is it even possible? And they said, watch out, Chris, because these people have guns. These are the sorts of people who have guns. But they're not. My wife has known these neighbours forever. They're not. It's just they decided, how dare you impede on my land, on my right to make noise, and they made even more noise just to make a point. You'd never see that in Europe. You really never would. And in this video, the purpose wasn't to talk about all my grievances with American neighbours. And this wasn't part of my script, but I remember the lady over there. One time, me and my wife, this was 1.5 years ago, me and my wife were pruning the tree. We have a small tree, it's not even a big tree, we're just pruning the tree. And the lady next door parked a car, walked out, and looked at me and said, Thank you for doing this, as if we'd been waiting for this for a long time. Your garden is messy, and at long last you're pruning your tree. I'm thinking, do you always speak to people like that? Have you made it through life speaking to people like that? Or has it worked for you, really? Has it worked for you, this formula, speaking to people like that? I remember the very first time that lady spoke to me, she said that the poison ivy that was growing in our garden came over to her garden or something, and she'd come up with this absurd theory. She was telling me that we were responsible and we should be doing this and that and that. I was new to America, I didn't even have my green card yet. It was very surprising to me, I didn't know how to react because no one had ever spoken to me like that in Europe. It's very, very in your face, very much so. To conclude on America, I think even in speech, Americans are a lot more direct. If this was a restaurant, they'd say, I need a new one, I want more water, give me this, give me that. And I think they rarely use softeners like could or would. It's not necessary. Okay, let's talk about France now. Now, France, compared to America, is a different world entirely because there are expectations. I'm not saying it's better. I'm not saying Americans are rude. I'm talking about different codes, different interpretations of the word politeness. Americans are not less polite, it's just different codes. So when you're in France, you're expected to say bonjour. So you say bonjour when you enter a shop, and you say au revoir when you leave. And you look people in the eye. Bonjour, au revoir. And even if it's just the person scanning your groceries. Sound pollution is regulated. And I think in Europe, generally, it is. So you don't mow your lawn or use power tools on a Sunday. It's not done. And you respect the neighbour's right to peace. It's expected. It's something you know. You respect their silence. And I think that the entire culture in France and in Europe generally is based on the unspoken rule, the unspoken assumption that you are not alone here. It's not you first and the others second. And when speaking to others, yes, of course, you use vous. You don't use tu, even though things are changing in France. They're trying to use tu in more cases, even in formal context, but I personally find it weird. I don't think that the language is designed for it. I think you should use vous for anyone that you wouldn't give a pat on the back to. That's the line in the sand. Use vous in all cases, unless it's a child, or someone that you would give a pat on the back to. Now in Britain, things are different still than in France, and certainly the US. British politeness looks different. It's more casual, and I'd say it's more friendly. And in Britain, you're expected to act like everyone's part of the same extended family. You treat people as if they were part of your extended family. People smile a lot more. You use your smile as a code for communication. You'll hear things like cheers mate and thanks love, even in a professional setting. So instead of being addressed as Mr. Smith in the case of a job application, you'll hear thanks John for sending in your CV. In Britain, we tend to soften everything. So instead of saying, can you close the window, or can I close the window, you'll hear things like, is it just me, or is it a bit chilly in here? You know, it's a very contrived way of asking for things. And just as in France, you respect your neighbours, you keep the noise down, you tell people if you're hosting a party, you let others know before you start sawing wood all afternoon, and it's just a way of saying, I know you exist, I know I'm not alone, and I acknowledge you. So to conclude this video, we've just spoken about 3 different countries with 3 different codes of politeness, and in France at least, it's about respecting the other person's humanity. It's not really about being overly nice or cheerful. I think it's more about formality, acknowledgement, and restraint. You know, you don't, as in Britain, assume familiarity. That doesn't work too well in France. You greet people, you say bonjour and au revoir. And if you're ever in doubt about how to act in France, here's a simple rule of thumb. Imagine that every stranger you speak to is a world-renowned professor who's written 1,000 books. How would you address them? And that's the baseline for politeness in France. Imagine that they're a professor, they've written 1,000 books, how would you speak to them? And before I say goodbye, one last rule, never forget, money doesn't entitle you to anything in France. It isn't America. People are not going to jump to attention just because you have money, and you'll get much better service in France if you respect individuals first. My name's Chris, I'm a French tutor for adults. Find me at OuiCommunicate. I hope this video was useful. See you soon.